Okay. Hello, my MGTOW brothers, back again. And if you follow the Socialism series, you've heard Richard Wolff give you a background on what he believes and what I believe socialism actually is. So in this video, I'm going to give my take on what socialism is from my perspective. But first, we have to talk about its opposite, or the background that socialism actually sprung out of, which is capitalism. Capitalism, simply defined, is the pursuit of profits within a price system. That's it. That's all. That's what capitalism is. In that and the laws of supply and demand, capitalism is very, very efficient at distributing goods, finding the price for those goods, and building wealth. Its market systems are very efficient. It's very fair but brutal. It encourages hard work and entrepreneurship. At its best, it's very good at encouraging innovation. But you got to remember, capitalism is a tool. It's an instrument, sometimes a very blunt instrument. And as an instrument, capitalism does not have a soul. So while capitalism is very good at can be very good at pushing a society forward, it's very bad at keeping a society together. Capitalism does a very good job at building wealth in a society, but it does a very job of running a society. You cannot run a society on capitalism. Capitalism brings out the natural competitiveness in human beings. It favors aggression, deceit, and greed. That's the reason you have sociopaths running Wall Street right now, because the desire to make profits and beat everybody else generates a win at all costs mentality. Look at your robber barons of the 19th century that made profits and developed markets at all costs, no matter what it costs to the society and the human beings that were under them. Capitalism in its initial stage under feudalism had a buffering system. It made profits for the society, but it wasn't run by capitalism. It was controlled by feudalism. The king was in control of how the wealth was distributed. The king was in charge of keeping the society together, keeping the society cohesive. Sometimes it was by distributing the wealth. Sometimes it was by force. Capitalism has never, ever kept a society together. It wasn't designed for that. It was designed for generating wealth. And capitalism can help a society or it can destroy one with equal ease, because, like I said, capitalism does not have a soul. Now, in the 18th century, when capitalism actually took over and destroyed feudalism and brought down kings and actually democratized the means for generating wealth and distributing wealth, initially it was fine. But what does capitalism do? It brings out the aggressiveness and greed in human beings. Capitalism wants to increase efficiency and profits. How do you do that? It's by cutting off so-called inefficient workers. The less you have to pay the people that generate the profits, or the less people you have to pay generating the profits, the more profits you actually make, which is the goal of capitalism. So when the agricultural revolution came to Europe and the industrial revolution came to Europe, it put workers and people off their land and out of work. So as you're putting people and workers out of work and they can't generate or make a living, what's going to happen to the society? It's either going to tear itself apart or it's going to tear up the system that you just built, because at the end of the day, a system or an instrument has to work for the society. And if it doesn't, society will cast it off. So if capitalism doesn't do well at managing a society or keeping a society together, or even equitably distributing the wealth of the society, what do you need? You need another system. If capitalism is good at generating wealth, you need something that's good at the other things that capitalism is very weak at or very poor at, or sometimes capitalism can't do and is not built for. What is the system that rose up? Socialism. Socialism doesn't really have a particular definition. There are many definitions of socialism that have been produced over the years. But at its core, from the beginning, socialism actually meant putting the means of production and the decision making in the hands of the people that actually do the job, that actually do the work, putting decision making in the hands of the workers. And at its broadest core, it means letting the people make decisions on the policies that affect them. Socialism, just like capitalism, is not just one thing. There's a core essence, just what I described as the core essence. But the way of implementing it differs from society to society. China, Russia, Great Britain, and the United States all have their own brand of socialism. How they implement it varies wildly from one country to another. So as Richard Wolff says, there is no socialism, there are socialisms. And there always has been since the beginning. If we look back, socialism or the socialist movements has its antecedents right on the heels of industrial capitalism. Most folks agree that the Industrial Revolution and industrial capitalism started in 18th century Scotland in 1775 or 1776 with the first implementation of the successful steam engine. The steam engine and the spin-off inventions that came from it and the implementation of the Industrial Revolution started to displace people and displace workers. Machines no longer needed human power for them to operate. Labor strife between the workers and the capitalist employers can be seen in England throughout the 18th century. The most famous movement, which I believe is the beginning of the socialist movement, were the Luddites, who have their antecedents going all the way back to 1779 with Ned Ludd destroying a threshing machine in Scotland. The Luddite movement sought to destroy the machines that would displace them as workers. They sought to organize so they could get a better deal from their capitalist employers. The movement peaked in the early 19th century between the years of 1811 and 1816, when it was said that there were more British soldiers fighting the Luddites than were actually fighting Napoleon. So that myth of capitalism being readily accepted by the people in the society is a myth. There has always been labor strife. There has always been movements of workers that have rebelled and fought back against being displaced by the industrial capitalist system. This is the soil that socialism grew out of. So when we look at it through this lens, you can see that socialism as an idea and as a movement existed long before Karl Marx was ever born, and long before he ever noticed the movement and actually put down principles. As Richard Wolff so aptly put it, socialism is capitalism's shadow. They can't be separated. You can't have one without the other. So even after the Luddite movement was smashed in 1816 and it was disbanded, it never stopped the struggle between the workers and capitalism. Government leaders soon figured that they had to work with these socialist leanings rather than trying to fight it. They saw what was coming, and it was better to give in and work with it rather than having displaced workers and the population overturn the system. So socialist movements in the mid 19th century sprung up all over the world, all over the developed world. Socialist democrats in the United States and Germany, in England and France, even in the repressive feudal government they called Russia. What people don't know, and what came as a shock to me, that state socialism was actually implemented by one of the most repressive and authoritarian governments in the world. And that was Prussian Germany in the late 19th century under a supreme right-wing authoritarian, Otto Bismarck. Bismarck saw what happened in the Paris Commune and how the ideas of the Paris Commune had the potential to overturn a society and start a revolution. So what he adopted was the minimal socialist ideas. Prussian Germany was the first to implement Social Security, universal health care, and welfare as we know it. They adopted the more popular ideas and put them under state control, and the radical elements of socialism were repressed and destroyed. The hardcore socialists in Germany were either exiled or jailed. Karl Marx was one of those socialists that were exiled. A tamer brand of socialism was basically folded into the existing political order under capitalism. Bismarck's motto became the motto for the rest of the world. One by one, westernized countries adopted this type of socialist principles in their country to keep industrial capitalism from tearing itself apart. Even today, in China and Russia, who were extreme socialist countries, are finding out that capitalism and socialism go hand in hand. One to produce wealth and the other to manage the society. So when we think about socialism and capitalism, when we think about taxes and welfare, we have to get out of the westernized binary thinking that it's an either or situation, it's either on or off, and actually realize, like the managers do, that they go hand in hand, they actually work together. All the wealth in the world does no good if there's no society around you to actually contain it. With that, I'm going to end this segment. I know it's going to be an ongoing discussion. I'm going to do more on socialism and capitalism in future videos. But for this segment, I'm going to sign off. And as always, questions, comments, other videos, keep the conversation going. See you next time.